Welcome to the Mythicist Milwaukee Show podcast. Before we get started, we'd like to extend special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 coming up on October 21st at historic Turner Hall in Milwaukee. Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research, author of the new book Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Alliance of America, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, and the Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Your $300 sponsorship includes a table at the conference, 1 ticket to the event, and 1 ticket to the VIP party, as well as a mention on all of our various social media platforms, including this fine podcast. Buy your tickets and sponsorships at mythicistmilwaukee.com. All of us here at Mythicist Milwaukee would like to thank all of our patrons for supporting this show. And now here's your hosts, Rob Moore and Brian Edward. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I love that guy who does that intro. He's fantastic. It's the podcast that puts God last. I'm here with my buddy Brian after a week off. Man, did you blow any fingers off last week during the 4th of July, Brian?
I still have them all.
Nice.
Well, wait, let me check. Yeah, I do.
You need those to do your job.
Giants could use a D lineman. So.
you obviously haven't seen Brian. The Giants do not want.
No, I couldn't get recruited on a high school team. I don't think.
Yeah, not much of a blocker there. This guy. We're joined today by the Scatheists. These guys are top-rated podcast, the Scathing Atheists, and we are a full house today, including producer Sean Frasek and engineer Jason Lawson, who's actually the guy who makes this a complete circle by having learned of Mythicist Milwaukee through the Scathing Atheist podcast. As I said, top-rated podcast. These guys are hot. They're doing what we want to do, Brian. How do we get to make money like these guys, man?
Well, we're going to absorb some of their moxie today.
Are we coattail riding today?
It's like osmosis.
I like that.
Through the phone.
Magic coattail ride for us. Welcome, guys. It's Noah Illusions and Heath and Wright. Get it? Oh, it's clever. What's up, guys?
Oh, he's on it. He's on it. Well done, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. Got to get up pretty early in the morning.
I just want to throw out very early that the key, as far as we see it, to money making in podcasting is all about your poop joke ratio, poop jokes to minute. Do you guys know that offhand?
I try to sell that around here, and the high-minded educational people that we go with here, they don't really want to go to the toilet humor, but I guess that really is the key, isn't it?
Well, I guess. I mean, do fart jokes count? It's almost poop.
It's close.
It squirts out a little bit, yeah.
It's like the aerosol version of a poop joke, but you want something a little more solid.
Right. I guess suppose
what we do is we keep a chalkboard up, and it just says, it's been 2 minutes since your last dick joke or fart joke, so you can keep track of it very easily.
Oh, nice.
Running tab.
I wouldn't know because I'm like the worst audience in the world. Never listened. I don't listen to any podcasts. I've never heard of you guys. I have no idea what you do. I'm way more interested in hearing myself speak.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah, why do we have Rob here?
As everybody knows here. Yeah. It's,
in that case, our podcast is very erudite.
But
very
tell us,
intellectual show.
You don't even have to pretend with me. I don't know what's going on. Tell us how long you've been at it. How did you get started? What makes you guys so great?
We've been at it for about 3.5 years, started in January of 2013. Basically, it was a kind of a different podcasting landscape in 2013. It's changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. But at that time, the podcasts available for atheists on the subject of atheists there was a lot of good informational stuff there. There wasn't a lot of good entertainment stuff. So we felt like, the audience of atheists is big enough to deserve their own entertainment show as well. And we kind of try to move in and fill that niche a bit.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned your show is for atheists, not so much for the people on the fence. But why did you want to do it? Why not, why not be listening to content as opposed to producing it? Why'd you get into the game?
I think, honestly, mostly for me anyway, it was because my wife was sick of listening to me rant and rave about religion. And I wasn't going to stop doing it, and I didn't want to get divorced. So she actually bought me a microphone and bought me a mixer and said, "Hey, why don't you let someone else listen to you bitch for a while?" No, it's not that I don't enjoy it. It's just that you're so good at it. We want to share that.
Yeah, nothing much changed in our lifestyle. We just put a microphone next to us while we talked about stuff like this. So
that's a good reason. I enjoy that.
And it's evolved into several podcasts. I hear we do movie reviews and we do readings from the Bible and
Skeptocrat. There's a political show that comes on sometimes.
Yeah, we do some current events and politics too. Yeah.
Love that name, Skeptocrat. You guys are real wordsmiths, real punsters. Were you comedians before this, or was it literally just you at home griping to the wife? Or do you have like a comedy background?
The latter, I would say.
Well, both of us have a background in entertainment. I was a street performer. I juggled for a long time, and that's basically comedy with props. So, so I had a bit of a background as an entertainer. Heath was a competitive flair bartender. Definitely had the an entertainer bug in him as well. And then, of course, our third partner, who is not able to make it today, Eli Bosnick, has been a professional magician basically his entire life. So, we all came from an entertainment background as well.
Oh, that's good. I felt bad because I was like, how do I get that funny if these guys are just normal guys? So I don't have to feel as bad anymore, right?
Yeah. No, the key, I think
you do. I think you do.
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Add that to my plate. Are you surprised on how much the podcast has picked up? Like the support that you've gotten. What was your goal when you started out in January of 2013? Like, where did you think you'd be at? Are you probably above where you you think you were at?
Yeah. We've finished off the 10-year plan in a couple of years there. I honestly, for me, podcasting was always about being able to finish the sentence. You know what I mean? Like when you're in conversation with people, very often you just can't get your full thought out before you've moved on to another subject or they've interrupted you or something like that. So all I wanted to do was be able to finish a full paragraph thought without interruption. And we got that right away. Everything else is gravy.
Right.
So he's just a guy who just likes to talk, just like I am, right? He just wants to keep going.
Yeah, but he wants to get the whole sentence in.
And also, he's funny.
And
that's a difference.
Nobody can argue with him, right? He makes a podcast. Nobody can argue with him.
Is there a funny book that I can read? Like, teaches me?
Can you read?
Come on.
Funny book. Comedy for dummies. Is that what you're looking for?
So were you guys always atheists, or was the name Noah real, or is that whole thing an illusion, or is Noah? Did your parents name you Noah because they were religious? Where'd you guys come from religiously as youths?
I'll let Heath start this one since his story's a little easier, I think.
All right, yeah, my story's pretty simple. Yes, I pretty much was an atheist the whole time since approximately birth or 9 months before that. And I grew up in like a very Irish Catholic town where I was kind of like the village heathen from an early age. I remember as young as like 6 or 7 having arguments with 20 or 30 Catholic people in a classroom or a lunchroom or recess, where me or maybe myself and my friend Dan were the only two atheists out there, and it was fun. It became a hobby of mine that is now a job, which is fantastic. So yeah, not much evolution in my thought process along the way. Pretty much the same the whole time.
All right, enlightened early in life. Noah, what about you?
Well, my background religiously is kind of complicated in that my mother and her whole family were Catholic, and my dad and his family were Mormon. So they had an argument early on in the marriage about which church they were going to take their kids to that never got resolved. I think they're still fighting about that. So I basically got out of church altogether as a kid. But I had religious parents, and they would try to once in a while, they'd take down the Bible or the Book of Mormon or whatever and try to get me some religious learnings. But it was a pretty half-hearted effort. I think I pretty much called bullshit on it about the same time I called bullshit on Santa Claus, thereabouts. Because they made about the same amount of effort to convince me of both.
Right.
You were a Mormonic.
So did you get married? I mean, did they combine it? Who won, Catholic or Mormon? Or did they go in the cathedral but wore the funny underwear?
Well, I've been trying to convince them to do some sort of cage match and maybe get the Pope and the Mormons to sponsor it on some level or something like that. But no, eventually, and this has been over just the last 5, 6, 7 years, they both found some non-denominational Protestant church. I know non-denominational Protestant church, but still, that's probably the majority of churches in the North at this point. So they've kind of settled in between their two particular breeds of crazy. But throughout my entire youth, they never did solve that argument. So basically, when I went to see my mom's parents, I had to pretend I was Catholic. When I went to see my dad's parents, I had to pretend I was Mormon.
Okay.
So those churches you're talking about are largely fundamentalist evangelical churches, aren't they? Are they? So did they go retro, or
are they the Bud Light of religion? Watered down?
No, they're very much the evangelical churches. Yeah, it says non-denominational on the front, but yeah.
Well, it is. It invites all kinds of crazies, those churches.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they're very specific about their crazy. If your crazy happens to for example, like gay marriage, they're not into that crazy at all. So
Right, right. It's been a topic recently, though, the sort of gathering of the old sects into those big, we call them giant prairie churches around here. They just seem to be evangelical, and they don't really, other than that, they don't really know what
the mega churches.
Yeah, the mega churches. Yeah, you see that as a northern thing? You don't see that in the South?
not as much. I mean, here mostly you can get like a Southern Baptist megachurch. You know, you can get a very specific megachurch. I think in the Midwest and up north, mostly, you know, in order to get a church that size, you have to be like, no, I'll take your money from no matter who you are.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
But here, and there's still a lot of religious, you know, homogeneity here. There's 400 types of Baptists down here, but yeah.
So you guys, like, Noah, you kind of grew up on a low theology as opposed to a high one. And Heath, sounds like what about your parents? Were they high theology and you just
no
rejected
theology, I think is
my parents.
Yeah, they Irish
were.
Catholics.
Neither of them were Catholics, actually. My dad was mildly Protestant brought up. His mom was somewhat religious, but my mom's side, pretty much not at all. She might have gone to a church once or twice, but I was never brought to church on holidays even or anything. So the only time I went to church actually was with my my high school girlfriend once. I went to a Catholic service and it was fucking terrifying. And I have not been back since.
You're one of the lucky ones, man. I actually grew up secular, basically, this guy.
Kind of.
Yeah, pretty much.
I keep sometimes I do have to like get brought to church or when I still visit my parents. And as I've been out of religion, it's only been like 2 or 3 years now. And it's getting cultier and cultier every time. So
I think you're
know
just
what
noticing it a little bit more.
I did notice it before.
Yeah.
Now you say South. Where are you guys at exactly?
Well, we're actually in the process of escaping from South Georgia. Heath's already gone. Yeah. We're moving back north, but I've been down here for about a couple of years now. Deep in the land of Pentecostals and speaking in tongues and snake handling and all that kind of nonsense. But about to move back a little closer to civilization here in the next couple of weeks.
So you're in Hazard County?
Yeah.
Real Deliverance style stuff down there, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, no, I'm in the Deliverance state. Yeah, that's a little north on a fictional river, but yeah, that's Georgia.
So you're moving back up to New York. You mentioned on the podcast that you're going full time. What does that mean? Does that mean you get to quit kind of regular jobs, or do you still have that? What's full timing?
Well, we've actually been full time at this for quite a while. I went full time with it, and not really voluntarily. And 1 year after we started, actually in January of 2014, I lost the job that I thought I was going to retire from. And I said, well, we're making a little money with the podcast. Maybe if I put my full time effort to it, we could turn that into a full time income. And my wife's like, well, you'll grow out of that. Kind of seemed like the middle-aged version of let's start a band, but it actually worked out really well for us. So I've been doing this full time since 2014. Heath since late 2014, like October of 2014, and now
we
our
play Guitar Hero full time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
one of the things, I mean, you guys started with the podcast, but now you guys are going to be touring the nation. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did that come up, and what are your plans for that?
Well, we're still in the very early stages of that. We're setting up a 2017 national tour of live recordings with our other podcast, God Awful Movies, which we haven't discussed, and that is mostly the brainchild of bringing on a consummate entertainer onto the team. Our buddy Eli joined the team almost exactly a year ago when we started that show. And he is a stage performer, and he is a phenomenally good one. So he's really kind of pushed us, and I'm sure you guys know this too. I know that you do your podcasting at least a little more publicly than we do, but it's you and people well sitting in front of a microphone, very different than being in front of a crowd of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you may know that there are hundreds or thousands of people that are going to hear it later, but there's no pressure on you there. You can kind of back up and fix things and stuff like that. So it's been something that, to be perfectly honest, Heath and I have been a little bit hesitant to move into, but Eli's really been kind of pushing that forward, and the audience has made it very clear that they want it too. So we're still deciding which cities we're going to hit, how many places we're going to go, but we're getting really excited about it. We're doing our first live show ever, actually, this time next month in New York City. We're playing to a sold-out crowd at the People's Improv Theater, And our second live show will be in Manchester, England in October as part of the QED conference.
Nice.
Oh, excellent.
It sounds like it'll probably have a little bit different. I mean, obviously it'll have to if it's more than just a podcast. It's a live show, but with a performer, there'll be some written content.
They'll have to wear clothes.
Performance. It's not just going to be you. Besides
It's
that,
New York City. You don't have to wear anything.
Our rider says we don't have to.
Besides that, it's not going to be them on a table podcasting, right? You're going to have.
I think maybe more interaction from the audience.
A little soft shoe, little song and dance, a little vaudeville.
Well, we are definitely set up for it with a juggler, a magician, and a flair bartender. We might have to work a little something out, but no, it'll primarily be just doing the pod. Of course, we do skits in God Awful movies, so we might be acting out a few of the skits, things like that. But
cool. Excellent.
I'm just going to throw beer bottles into the audience and see how that goes. Yeah,
Works for me.
Any plans for Milwaukee?
Blues Brothers.
Any plans for Milwaukee stop on that tour?
You guys have to throw the beers to us in that case, but we're certainly considering it.
Milwaukee, the good land. Yeah, let's do it.
We know all.
It's had many visitors before.
We know all the crickets in town, so
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
when you come and they're looking for a secular audience, you can discover what we have. That there's almost no one.
Yeah,
here.
you'll meet all of us.
They'll meet all of us, the 12 atheists in Milwaukee who do conferences, podcasts, debate series, and more. And we're doing one in October. Of course, the big Myth Conference 3 is coming. October 21st.
Yeah, you got the big Bart Ehrman.
The big debate,
Yeah, the big debate.
Let's get right to
Robert Price.
Also, part of that conference, we've got Thomas Smith.
Yeah,
coming
Thomas
as
Smith.
well.
Yeah.
Thomas
His first
Smith
conference lecture.
His first speaking engagement.
Yeah.
T and the B.
Yeah.
T and the B.
You guys know Tom?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, Rob doesn't listen to any of your shows. If he
Or
listened-
any of ours.
or any of
Not
ours.
a damn one. Not a damn one.
If he would listen to one, he would know Thomas is definitely.
Yeah, we heard you were dissing mythicism, you guys. I think that's why you're on. Isn't that why you're on the show?
I listened to them both, and he did a good job. I mean, in the diatribe, you mentioned, you're like, right away, you're like, I'm going to piss everybody off. You
Right.
kind of hesitated for about a half a second, and then you went on and did it. And then the one on the 12th, the week later, you gave a good discussion. Why did you decide to do that?
I should make it very clear that I don't really have a position on mythicism. I don't think that I'm informed enough on the debate to really to add much to the conversation in terms of which side is right. But what I saw in a lot of atheists, a lot of people who emailed me, et cetera, and even in myself, was this sort of default tendency to cling to mythicism without really looking at the debate, without really knowing the arguments. And I do feel that there are plenty of people that are far more qualified on these questions that have come to a very hard conclusion that the mythicist position is correct. But the majority of people that I talk to that have relevant PhDs, that are historians, that are biblical scholars, et cetera, even the secular ones, are not sold or not convinced by the mythicist position.
Right.
Now,
You specifically, you mean Jesus mythicism, because I guess my only real nitpick was like, obviously, Moses mythicism, because mythicism, I guess, it's the look into. But go on.
Right. Exactly. And the terminology is always, especially when you're trying to get complex thoughts, squeezed into a 5-minute diatribe. But yes, I was very much talking about Jesus mythicism in that diatribe. And, the way I look at it, the way that I normally approach debates like this is that I look to the experts. If there's a consensus among the experts, I default to that consensus unless somebody can definitively show me that there is a fundamental flaw in the way that the consensus was arrived at. And I think Jesus mythicists are doing a good job of trying to establish that.
Right.
And I think that's where the argument is going to live and die. But until now, and my little sister's a historian, so I know quite a few historians. I talk to quite a few on it, and most of the ones I meet do not take the Jesus mythicism arguments very seriously. The people, and I don't even know how one goes back into history and determines whether someone was a real person or not. I don't know what the historical methodology on that is. And everything that I've learned about that, I've learned looking into the question of Jesus's historicity. So, obviously, I don't feel that I'm qualified to make a judgment that is counter to the consensus of experts. And that's really the only thing that I was trying to express in that diatribe. And I think that we should all be cautious of that, especially because as atheists, we have at least a little bit of motivation on that side. We kind of want Jesus to have been a myth because it just, obviously that closes the door entirely on Christian theology and the Christian religion in the most fundamental way.
Right. As you said, it would be hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it'd be the best. It'd be the
I
best.
guess,
Well,
I guess
yeah,
my,
you can.
my,
Yeah, go ahead.
My challenge would be most atheists that I encounter have a real, what difference does it make attitude? I think we probably do. It would tickle us if we could prove but to my mind, it's like, what are we really talking about here as it affects the larger movement?
Well, right. And that was another point that I was trying to make with the diatribe, is that this is an argument that is very losable.
Right.
When we're armed with so many arguments that are like, if you want to, if you simply want to argue that the stories of Jesus, whether or not he was a historical figure, are myths, well, that is an unlosable argument. So if we go one step beyond and say that there wasn't a person on whom that was based, and again, going against the consensus of historians on a topic like that you said, Rob, doesn't matter. Ultimately, doesn't really matter to our arguments. It seems like a misguided use of our efforts a lot of times. Now, that's not to say that it's not an important question, because from a historical perspective, look, I care about all of the historical characters and whether they existed or not. I'm a big history fan. So I do think it matters. I do think the conversation should go forward, but I don't think that we should mislead the atheist community as a whole into thinking that this is a done deal or that this is a, majority view or anything like that.
And I think you said it, though, if you take those stories away, because those are obviously mythological or supernatural, but the question is, what are you really left with? And I think that's the thing, is there is nothing else beyond that. If you take those stories away, everything else that we even point to historically, that we say, well, maybe Josephus, maybe Tacitus, they're still talking about the Christ. And if you're saying the Christ is a myth, and there's really a Jesus, well, we know nothing about it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I think there's two steps to the mythicist position. The first step being showcasing how the story is supernatural and how it mirrors a lot of the earlier mythological saviors that have been proven to be purely mythological. That's the first step. If you can get people to understand the supernatural claims are just made up in mythology, that's a win. But and Raphael Lataster puts this perfectly. The second part, from the historicity standpoint, is really a conversation among atheists, and I think that's what we're having here today. A Christian is kind of left at the door. A Muslim is left at the door when it comes to this, because we've already excluded all the supernatural claims of this person, the supernatural characteristics. But yeah, the second part of this, and it's interesting because, and it is important, Rob. I think it is important because Christianity, Islam, they get special pleading because these are seen as historical events. Mm-hmm. When you look at Hinduism, when you look at Zoroastrianism or Roman mythology, we don't view those as historical events, so they no longer have that special pleading that comes along to it. When you're able to at least challenge the historicity of Jesus, it takes away that this isn't a historical event. This is why this is important.
So atheists could, in time, debunk Christianity through mythicism, is your point?
Yeah, exactly. Well, but I think, I think it already kind of, just being able to question, again, if you go back centuries, we're not able to question these characters. If you look in Saudi Arabia right now, if you question Muhammad's supernatural claims, you get killed. I
don't think you have to be in Saudi Arabia to get killed for that.
Well, I agree. You don't, but you know what I mean? There are very fundamentalist areas where just asking these questions that we do, you get killed. And this has historically been the case. If you go into 3rd, 4th century Rome and you question Jesus's historicity, even though they're arguing at the time over what he is. Is he a demigod? Is he a god? Is he the son of God? They have all these councils they're bringing together to argue over what this figure is. But if someone asks the question, you're in a world of hurt.
We'll let you speak eventually.
Yeah, we'll edit all this. Jason will edit all this.
Yeah, this isn't Nuremberg, we promise.
No.
I just wanted to say one other thing on the question of whether it matters. I think that David A.R. White, the producer of such greats as God's Not Dead and Brother White, accidentally made the case for why this mythicist argument does matter in his most recent work, God's Not Dead 2, which we saw on opening day in theaters. Thanks, Eli. And because this whole movie, I don't know if you guys, how familiar you are with it. I'm way more familiar with Christian cinema than most.
Sorry.
But the whole plot of this movie was that a history teacher started talking about Jesus in her history class and eventually gets away with it because Jesus is a historical figure, right? Mm-hmm. So if we can put if we can put the nail in that coffin and say, no, Jesus was not a historical figure, everything about Jesus is a myth, everything about it is purely religious, that does take away that ability to look at him as a historical figure and sneak him into history class and things like that where he doesn't belong.
I would love to see him in mythology class. It's true.
Well, right, exactly. So, so I do think from even an academic standpoint, it does matter. It is an important question. But yeah, for the average lay atheist, it doesn't much matter.
Good point.
Well, I think, and there are people, we just had a debate with Richard Carrier and Justin Bass in Milwaukee. And what came out of it, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the SNAP organization, the survivors of those abused by a Catholic priest. They were highlighted in the Boston Globe movie, the Spotlight movie. But anyway, so we have one of the directors in Milwaukee. He still practices in Milwaukee, and he showed up to the debate. And the debate was on whether or not Jesus miraculously resurrected.
Well, there was evidences,
whether or not there's evidence for Jesus' miraculous resurrection. Obviously, we all take the stance that there isn't. But where this thing became very important was in the court system, believe it or not. So they, and correct the numbers, Brian, if I'm wrong, but the Catholic Church in Milwaukee hid $50 million.
$57 million.
$57 million into a cemetery fund. Because it's cemetery trust. So, because in the in Catholicism, the belief is that these people will miraculously resurrect.
You'll get a bodily resurrection, not just a soul resurrection, but the bodily resurrection.
So they were under all of this pressure for the survivors to sue them and get their the money for being molested as a child. And the Catholic Church took this $57 million and hid it in the cemetery fund so that the survivors couldn't get at it. And there was express letters that were written from, who was it?
Or the Catholic Church. But ultimately, I mean, to make the long story short, they said that the rights for the abused people to get compensation did not overtake the right of the people that were buried there to get their bodily resurrection. They made a First Amendment argument against freedom of religion. I mean, seriously, if this had been a Protestant church, it wouldn't have flown. So it's the bodily resurrection was key.
So
what does it cost to resurrect somebody? What kind of budget do you think for each person?
Yeah, it's $57 million was put in a cemetery fund to keep the cemetery in good shape. So when these bodies did come back to life, they would have everything they needed.
Yeah, they don't. You don't want to raise from the dead and everything's all shabby. The grass hasn't been mowed.
Right, exactly.
It wouldn't be a good time.
So Peter, I mean,
with this tiny little detail, we became central.
And there were express written letters from the leaders, the Catholic leaders, to the Vatican stating this is why they're doing this and for no other reason, just to hide the money. And this was presented in court, and the Catholics, they won. I mean, that's under review finally after like 2 years. But Peter Isley came and he shared that story, and this is why these conversations and these debates need to happen, because there are like real people that have been victimized as a result of these supernatural claims. So I think for us, we feel the mythicist position is important, just on the sense of we just continue to question, continue to answer or to ask the right questions,
but fairly.
And we're not going to if new information is presented that Jesus existed, well, great. But obviously, the mythicist position has gotten us to the point where we can actually challenge the supernatural claims that historically have not been able to be challenged. And you have a lot of PhD authors out there of 8 right now. Lattice there will be 9 that have come forth. There are, PhD scholars that are sympathetic, but they haven't come forth yet. But as this gains momentum, our hope is, that this is more of a topic. It's in the same case, just like what happened with Moses. You go 30 years ago, they're showing the 10 Commandments on television because this is an historical event, and, you look at today where the consensus that Moses and the patriarchs didn't even exist. I mean, this is the natural progression of these religions into mythology.
This is Sean playing Noah on the diatribe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but this is the natural progression of these religions. Is they at one time they're viewed as historical events. They write mythic biographies, which is what Jesus' biography looks like. It's a mythological biography. Over time, people question it. And then it gets put into mythology. I mean, this is just the natural progression of these religions.
I think I want a hug.
And as regards the majority consensus among historians that was brought up in the diatribe, it would be a lot easier for me to agree or to accept that consensus if it wasn't for what seems to be a ridiculously obvious lack of evidence. As a layperson, I've yet to have anybody throw any kind of argument at me that makes me think that Jesus might have existed at all. And I don't think he needs a conspiracy theory to see that historians traditionally are attached to the Judeo-Christian myth arc in their families and in their personal lives, and B, working for institutions where they're afraid to buck the trend, to come out. If there was any real evidence at all, I'm waiting to hear it, and maybe we will.
Well, you're gonna, Bart's going to bring it. Yeah.
But that's the Bart Ehrman and Robert Price debate, and that's why I think we're all excited.
Well, I guess to me, that's why mythicism is compelling, is because we finally are seeing, we're seeing a group of scholars that are starting to be peer-reviewed, taken seriously, that really don't have an axe to grind. And,
right.
And it's not hard for me to believe that all of the rest kind of have.
Yeah, no. What you mentioned was the that YDK, WTF, YTA argument. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Like, I think you're right. Is this where you just feel like if you're going to argue this, you got to argue it right? And I thought it was a great point you made.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we have to really keep in mind as this debate is progressing is that as lay people, we're not really equipped to answer these questions, right? Like, so I looked into, a number of other historical figures that are generally accepted to be a historical figure. Like, you look at, what's his name? The example just
Adam, Joseph.
slipped my
John the Baptist, George Washington.
Okay, keep going.
No, but again, my point being, that to me personally, like if you took any number of historical figures for whom the historical record is not super impressive, but that are generally agreed to be historical figures, and you said, hey, look, this is the only evidence we're basing that on, I don't know that I wouldn't be like starting to say, oh, well, that guy's not historical, that guy's not historical, that guy's not historical. And again, that's really where I come from in this argument, is just the simple fact that I don't even know, leading into my knowledge of Jesus mythicism, I don't even know how this is normally done in the historical world.
Well, and I agree with that, and I think the New Testament scholars, they obviously have an axe to grind. They have a horse in the race, if you will. But when you look at the secular scholars, this is where it gets even more complicated and frustrating, is that the secular scholars, Bart Ehrman and all these other scholars, they can't even agree on Jesus's like who he was, where he was born, how he died, what he was he a failed Messiah, stealth Messiah, magician? Like when you start seeing, and a lot of times when they're talking about Jesus, their own ideas they're writing about their own perception through this figure. It's kind of like the "what would Jesus do" thing, because that's a perfect thing for people to use. But they can't even agree themselves on what he was, what he did, where he's from. Yeah. So that adds even more. That's why I'm going to love to see what Bart says. We already know Bart's argument. But it would be interesting to see it live and see, how do you argue for something that no one can really agree on?
He's like Kaiser Soze. Is that who you're thinking of, Noah?
That's it.
I saw a movie one time. I'm pretty sure that proves it.
You mentioned God's Not Dead deals with mythicism. Where do you find all these other shows that you're doing for your podcast? That you're these religious movie reviews?
Well, at this point, it just Netflix and YouTube recommend them to us, but ruined all my accounts on everything. But yeah, it's when we first set out to do this, because of course the God Awful Movie started as a segment on Scathing Atheist. We just have Eli on once a month or so to review movies, and what would end up happening is we would record 70 minutes of good stuff, and then I'd have to whittle that down to 30 minutes to fit it in the show or whatever. We're like, okay, this is just silly. We might as well be doing this as its own separate show. And at first I had some skepticism. Eli said, well, yeah, we could just once a week break down a different Christian movie. I'm like, aren't we going to run out of movies? And he just laughed at me, and he laughed at me.
What was your favorite?
Oh, wow.
Or
good question.
Unfavorite, whatever.
Yeah.
Leap and Leap 2. We just did them, but that was fantastic.
Yeah, it's the Christian apocalyptic
parkour movie. Yeah, it's fresh in my head, so maybe I'm biased, but they were
parkour. That's where they're jumping around like ninjas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not these
like
guys,
ninjas.
Yeah,
they were jumping.
Ones,
I guess.
Yeah, the good ones do that. I'd have to say if I had to pick a favorite, the one that frustrated me the most, that was the most difficult for me to watch, was a movie called A Matter of Faith, about a dad who gets into a debate with his daughter's college biology professor about the truth of evolution, and of course wins the debate.
And it's Harry Anderson. That's the worst part. It just kills a part of me.
Harry the Hat. You got to be kidding me.
I wish you hadn't even told me that.
Yeah, he's the biology professor that gets bested in the debate. That one was, but as far as like, if I just wanted to show someone how insane it gets, I think there's a movie called If Footmen Tire You, What Will Horses Do?
Yeah.
And it is the most insane thing you'll ever see. It's only an hour long. It's an easy watch, and it is so crazy. It's so filled with that, evangelical bloodlust, revenge porn concept. Yeah, it's a wonderful and amazing thing. And anyone who ever says, well, not all Christians think that, I can say, yeah, but enough of them do to make movies.
Right. Are you guys getting excited for Passion of the Christ 2?
I don't know about excited.
Well, you know what I mean.
There's
The afterglow.
It might not be the exact right term, but
Right.
I'm starting to steel myself for it. Yeah.
Well,
Which one?
what is the premise? Does anyone know I've done no research on this. What is the premise of?
I understand Jesus gets resurrected or something like that.
Spoiler. Come on. You got to say spoiler
ruin the
alert.
whole thing, but that's a big part of it.
Okay, so it's after the ascension, essentially.
Ascension.
Jesus, first
The
week.
resurrection.
Sure.
This is an orientation and first week in heaven.
I don't know. Right.
His welcome back party.
I honestly haven't seen the first one yet, so I don't know how far into the story they go. We're doing that actually at our first live show, so I got to watch it soon. But so I don't know how far into the Jesus story they go in the original movie.
Yeah, it just goes to where he dies on the cross.
Oh well, there you go. You can have
And
them in
then
half.
the sun is blocked out.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, the sun is blocked.
How do you guys get through those pieces of shit? Don't you want to kill them? I couldn't do it. How do you?
humor, man?
Yeah, man.
It's the closest this job ever comes to feeling like work. Yeah.
I have porn on a second screen a lot of the time while I'm watching them. To be honest.
That's cheating,
Phone,
man.
whatever.
I want a real
hilarious.
review.
I think he means right now.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, also right now, I didn't say that, but yeah, you are correct.
Well, he's got me on his screen, so there you go.
Wow,
What,
that's a totally different genre.
Which one of you nasties licked Ray Comfort, man? At
that would have
Reason
been
Rally.
Eli. We want to hear this story. The Eli and Ray Comfort.
Well,
At the Reason Rally.
unfortunately, Eli would have to be here to do it justice. I saw it from a distance. Eli showed up early, and he had been saying on our show for weeks that he was going to lick Ray Comfort at the Reason Rally.
Why lick him?
I don't know. I assumed it was a joke.
Okay.
I assumed that was just something funny to say for him, but no, it was a mission. So I was, and I made the mistake. I was staying in DC, and I was like, oh, you know what? My hotel is right here by the National Mall. I'll just walk. I won't have to take a cab or anything. Well, it's on the other side of the National Mall, so I'm walking all the way across it. I'm
Yeah,
late.
we
for
were
the
at the
meeting.
liaison. I tried walking the first day too, and oh god.
Yeah, in that humidity, it was a blast. So. So I walked out there, and I'm getting these increasingly urgent texts from Eli the whole way. He's like, "Where are you? Ray Comfort is right next to me. Bring," and because I had all the microphone and all of that stuff, obviously, and so he's texting me like every 3 seconds. He's like, "I'm gonna lick him. I'm gonna lick him. I'm gonna lick him." And so finally, I get there, and I'm basically running because I'm like, "Okay, I don't want to bail Eli out of jail today," and not that I am fine with that most days, but Shelley Siegel was playing and everything. I didn't want to miss it.
Sure.
So I'm walking up, and I see him talking to Ray Comfort, and so my pace quickens a bit. And then I see him and his girlfriend taking a picture, and he sticks his tongue out all silly. And I guess Ray's just thinking, okay, he's just being silly. And just as she's taking the picture, he turns around and licks him. He just turns around and Ray, of course, is looking at the camera, so he doesn't see it happen, really. This is a magician, master at misdirection and everything. And he just looks at Eli for the longest time. I can't, of course, I'm too far away to hear what's happening, but it's very obvious that he's saying something stern, something like, "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," or something like that. Eli says something, diffuses the whole situation. Ray Comfort walks off. Doesn't look very happy, but he walks off. My heart starts to slow. I come up and I'm like, "What did you say to him?" He says, "I said it was cheek sweat."
Well, I'm reviewing my commandments, and I don't remember a "thou shalt not lick."
Right. Yeah, that's totally.
I'm surprised you didn't hear the
Fair
crikey.
game. So what was your guys' take on the Reason Rally? Because we were there obviously, and we had a little run-in with a YouTuber who shall stay nameless on our live broadcast. But what was your take on it? Was it taken over in any way that some of the reports were saying, or what do you guys think?
I'll tell you what, I know that they were expecting a bigger crowd than they got. So a lot of people have come around to opine on why that is. I had a phenomenally good time. I thought they did a great job organizing it. I thought, I guess a couple of their big name speakers sort of backed out or got accused of domestic abuse right at the last minute and stuff. So that complicated issues. But I thought they did a phenomenal job. I was at one of the after parties that night. They did a great job with that. I had a blast. I got a chance to meet a lot of people. So.
Yeah. I wasn't able to harass any minorities. There was like a whole policy about that. But other than that, I thought it was great. It was pretty
Did you
nice.
screw up your gender pronouns? I was on there too.
Yeah, right. Could have moved off the lawn and abused whoever you wanted.
No, that really complicated the whole thing. But I thought otherwise it was a pretty good job. Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say, I just thought the most amazing thing is all the Christian protesters. I mean, do you see atheist protesters like that when the Christians gather?
Well,
I don't know because I never go. I mean, obviously we had quite a few of them at the Ark Park.
The Ark Park, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I wasn't really a big fan of, by the way. But
the Ark Park crosses separation with the government funding issues. It kind of crosses the line there. They're not just protesting Christians' right to gather.
Exactly.
But your average revival doesn't have atheists up front. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and that was just so bizarre to me. I watched people just screaming at all the people that walked by, and I'm like, I don't think Carnegie would agree with your strategy here, man. Or what? Do you really think that these people are all going to go home that night or back to their hotels and think, he seemed pretty confident that I was going to burn in hell. I should look into this.
Right. Exactly.
So you're saying you didn't protest at church this morning? Am I the only one?
I did not say that. I don't know.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
You were late.
I know we don't talk about it a lot, but I figured that's what we all do, right?
Right. Well, I don't speak on behalf of the entire group, but I feel protesting is just a waste of time. And I think in the Ark case, it was interesting to see, Arn Ra out there debating and things like that. But
yeah, that's fun.
really, you're just driving more traffic to them. I mean, honestly, if you don't like something, you just ignore it.
I don't know. I think that there is a value because I think a lot of the people that were going to it didn't realize or probably weren't aware of some of the shady, unconstitutional stuff that happened along the way. So if their goal there was to make sure that everyone who arrived at the Ark Park knew that there were, serious violations of church-state separation that went on with this thing, then I think it was a probably worthwhile to do. And I think when you saw the coverage of the Ark Park on the news, you generally saw coverage of the protest, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I do agree that a lot of protests as they're organized are fairly useless, but I think that one was important. I think it was important that we had a presence there. A lot of atheists and a lot of just YouTubers and bloggers and stuff have been really kind of leading the effort to hold Ken Ham's feet to the fire on the constitutional violations to begin with. So, obviously the mainstream media just really isn't doing the job there. And I don't mean that as an indictment on them. It might just not matter enough to them, or they just might not want to piss off their Christian viewership. So I do think it's important that, if the powers that are supposed to protect us from these type of violations aren't doing it, that we make it known that that's happening. I think that was a pretty effective way to do it.
That's a good point.
A statement of faith, a statement of chastity, and the earth is 6,000 years old with public funds. Come on,
right?
And I mean, even if this is a private company, you can't do that. I mean, it's silly. So you guys are doing a good job of raising awareness on this issue. At the rally, did you watch the Batman and Jesus trailer? That was probably my favorite part.
Yes, I did. It was hilarious.
And thank you guys for having Joseph on. What do you think about that project? We can't wait to hear the interview.
I'll tell you what, he was a phenomenal interview. Had a lot of fun with it. Really funny guy, and I'm very much looking forward to it because like I said, I do think that this debate needs to proceed in the public eye as well as in academic circles. That's what I told him. I don't know that I'm convinced by the arguments, but that doesn't mean I don't want to hear them.
Yeah,
and I also think that one of the real Achilles heels for this movement academically is that you have things like Zeitgeist and Religious that try to present a lot of this information and do it incorrectly with poor scholarship, with incorrect facts. So, if there's a show coming out or a movie coming out that's going to treat that same material with a little bit more academic rigor, I think that's definitely a good thing, not just for people on the side of Jesus's ahistoricity, but on both sides. Better information is better for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Zeitgeist did a disservice to the whole.
Well, and that's what we're trying to do with Batman and Jesus is bring the scholars together that actually have studied this for decades in some cases, and then utilize a popular figure like Batman to get the layman interested. Because the other thing with this is when you start diving into it, and Rob, you point this out all the time. It can be, it's a big project. It's a lot of reading you have to do. There's a lot of different arguments you have to wade through. And I think if you can make it popular by putting a popular figure in there, I think that'll help it out, I think.
No doubt. We see that right here when people stop and look at the poster. It just grabs people.
Right.
And maybe we'll find out Batman's real.
Right.
So there's that.
Wait, are you saying he's not real? Wait,
what?
I'm saying it's possible.
We'll talk about it
okay,
later.
open question. Okay.
But yeah, I know I wouldn't want to be up there arguing with Ehrman. I'm sure he'd wipe the floor with me. So
yeah.
It'll be good to go to that just to hear both sides.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of which, we want to take this opportunity to announce the moderator for that debate is going to be none other than Matt Dillahunty himself. Looking forward to
Excellent.
To him. I think he'll add a dimension to the entire event.
So is he going to be armed with an assault rifle or just a pistol?
I do not know the man, so it's not
I'm
for
just
me to
curious.
guess.
Well, but I think it's funny, though. You have three major atheists debating this, and I think that kind of goes back to the original point of this is a conversation for atheists. You have Dillahunty, Ehrman, and Price, all three are
he'll
atheists.
be fair. He's just tough, and that's what's good. I think he'll keep things on track.
Yeah.
He can't hang up on either of the debaters, though. That might be an issue.
Well, and
No
he's
call-ins.
from Texas, so I'm assuming he will come armed. I think that was the right question.
Yeah, so yeah, tell us, guys, outside of the tour, what else is coming up? Some big things that are on the radar. You mentioned QED.
Yeah, very excited about that. I've actually never been to England, so we're going to be going up there doing a couple of Skeptics in the Pub events in Scotland as well.
Awesome.
I've been warned to just not pronounce any Scottish city names from now on. People told you're going to screw it up. Just don't even bother. So just say Scotland. But we'll be in the two largest cities in Scotland, which I've been forbidden from announcing, or pronouncing, I should say.
You're going to Edinburgh and Glasgow. I'll say it for you.
Yeah, there you go.
Well done.
Yeah, Scott, you're going to love Scotland. It's absolutely beautiful.
And then
lovely.
I'm assuming Cogdis will be with you guys. You guys traveling together? Are you hanging out?
That we are. Hopefully we won't be in the same train car. I've been with those guys before, British food. It's not going to be a pleasant trip for anyone who's on that train.
Right? Are you bringing? Are you bringing your transporta potty with you? Like your stuff is great. The fake sponsors for all of your videos. I mean, I was writing them down. They were hilarious. The transporta potty is for Christians that can take their own bathroom. So in case you're in North Carolina and you get
it's a lugaloo.
Yeah, it's great. And then,
that would be when you're in England, you can steal the lugaloo.
They had a pro-life.
Look for the Demijohn also. Yeah,
Demijohn.
The MMROPG pro-life organization, Second Life After Death. Absolutely beautiful. Where do you get, how long does it come up with these things? These are better than on the You Don't Know Jack, What a Prick Cactus Company.
Right.
Yours are better. And that stuff is good stuff.
Thanks.
How long does that take to come up with that? I mean, do you sit around? Or are you guys getting good at 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or is it hours?
That one is pretty much all Heath. Occasionally me and Amir Eli will come up with an idea and throw it his way, but that's almost 100% Heath.
Wow. Well done. What about the 30 seconds? Preparing for your podcast, I'm listening to it and I'm realizing how bad I am and how much work must go into that. I mean, this is hours and hours, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it depends. One time he threw out for the 30 seconds, what was it? It was gay Catholic bird porn.
Pornithology. Catholic.
Pornithology.
Beautiful.
That one probably I spent about 3 hours trying to come up with a couple of them that fit into that. But, some of them just roll right off the tongue. But yeah, no, we figured out, we did the math on it. Obviously the fact that we're able to do this full time, allows us to do a lot of things that most podcasters are not able to do just because of, work constraints or family constraints. But we probably spend close to an hour in pre-production on every minute of the show, or maybe a little over that.
Wow.
So yeah. And I mean, of course, a lot of what we write, a lot of what we record never makes it to air. We do exactly 60 minutes every week, but we record sometimes 80, 85 minutes to get that 60 minutes. So.
Wow. And what's the next level on your Patreon as it goes up? What are you looking to do next, and what's your next goal? Because like I said, this is worth paying for.
The live touring a little bit, going to a few new cities and that sort of thing would be the next goal for both shows, I believe, on Patreon at the moment.
And we're kind of like, we've realized that we're almost certainly going to reach those goals. So we really have to start doing the prep work for it now.
That's great.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, certainly also looking forward to that.
Plastic surgery, maybe.
Yeah, well, a little bit of but I think the other big goal we've got coming up on Scathing is increasing our video content. A lot of the segments that we do, I think, really lend themselves to animation, lend themselves to live action and things like that. So we really want to up our game on that. It's the amount of good atheist content on YouTube, I think, is probably far greater than the amount of good atheist content in podcasting at this moment. So there's a lot more people already filling these important niches. But I still think that there's some things that we can bring there. But obviously that radically increases the cost. It's radically increases the amount of time you have to spend. So.
Oh yeah, we know all about that.
We do know a good director you can hire.
Right.
Oh, there you go.
Right. I think with the scripts you guys put together and the concepts that you put together, I think it'd be fantastic to have a video project like that. I think that would do really well. And
the Reading the Bible and Reading the Quran series, which I think is current right now, you guys are doing a great job on that. I mean, how long is it taking to get through that? And do you guys all crank it out at the same time, or I just love this Quran series.
We started with the Bible in 2013. I think like a month after we started the show, or 2 months after we started the show. So yeah, I think it took us about 2 years going basically one book at a time through the Old Testament, about 1 year to get through the New Testament, and it's gonna take us a year to get through the Quran. We're a little over halfway through now, and then I believe we're on to the Book of Mormon next year.
Oh, awesome!
Do you ever taunt Thomas with
with how quickly you guys have done it? Right.
I mean, he only had a 3.5 year head start on us, I believe. But
what is he on the 6th day of Genesis right now?
He's still reading about how to build the Ark of the Covenant, I think.
Right.
And for the listeners out there that haven't seen it, I mean, the comments are both good and funny. Like, for example, they were saying when Muhammad or when the Quran says to go and kill somebody, it's not actually you killing the non-believer. It's actually God killing the non-believer through you. And someone made the comment, well, who gets the XP then?
Right.
Awesome.
Well, I think one of the things
he's kill stealing,
like with atheists, typically, for whatever reason, regionally probably focused on Christianity. You guys are actually taking it to the Quran, which I think is fantastic and needs to be done more. What are some of the things you guys are taking away from this book as you're going through it?
That the Bible is not as bad as you thought.
Which is saying something.
I heard. I heard Thomas talking to you guys when Thomas was on your show a few months back, and he's talking about the Bible, people, it's the most boring thing in the world. Oh, I'm going to do the Quran next, and I'm just laughing under my breath. Like, you are going to be missing those begats one day.
Did you see the poll that he has now? He's trying to branch away from just following the Quran being next. He's for me, and I don't remember all of them, but I think the Book of Mormon was in there. He's talking about doing the non-canonical Gospels possibly next, or one thing that I thought was pretty unique, possibly doing Dianetics.
That would be good.
Oh, wow.
That would be good. That needs to happen.
No, but see,
demons. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, though. Now, I got to say, I've actually read Dianetics. I've read most of these. I've read the Book of Mormon. I read the Quran before we had started this. I've read David Icke's book that Tom and Cecil over on CogDis are going through.
Yeah.
But I've read Dianetics, and I've got to say that would be so insanely boring. None of the cool, fun stuff about Scientology is in that book.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, there's no volcano.
You don't get that unless you unlock OT8 or whatever it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's all just pseudo-psychology written in the most just urbane, repetitive, boring, stupid prose that you can imagine. So, yeah, I think that would, honestly, I would suggest, if he was taking my advice, I'd say go for the Book of Mormon because it's got some really stupid stories in it, or go for one of these whatever pseudo-canonical New Age texts.
Yeah.
Like Raymond Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft or something like that. One of these ones that really breaks down all the New Agey crap. Because that's something that a lot of atheists, either don't have much familiarity with or are hesitant to really turn the screws on.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But
According to the movie we just watched, Mein Kampf would fit into this list. Suggesting, actually.
Yeah, and I was going to say on
the Book of Mormon,
Yeah.
the New Age stuff, and Hitler. Yeah, those three.
Yeah, I was going to say on
together.
Dianetics, it really is just one man trying to prove that he's not crazy, even though a bunch of people are telling him he's crazy. That's all it is.
For
Wow.
about 900 pages, yeah.
Yeah.
Mein Kampf. Wow, but yeah, to have read all these things already, I mean, you have a strong stomach. You could probably take a bottle of Advil with no food and just feel fine.
Yeah, but we got off of it. What are some of the things you guys are seeing out of the Quran? Some of the just insane things that people may not know.
Surah 9.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, there are so many spots in the Quran where you just look at it. And so I've got two translations that I'm going through. And one is this translation that my wife got from some Muslim that was a customer at some point or whatever. And it's the most anodyne possible version of the Quran. You know, they're trying their best. They leave out the word slave here and there. And so, you know, comparing that with a more academic translation is hilarious. But even in the, you know, whatever, the whitewashed version of the Quran, it still tells you to kill people a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
I think Heath really nailed it. He said that the way to find all the best parts of the Quran is just to get it online and then just do a Control F on "Oh Jews." I don't think
it literally it takes you exactly to the funniest passages in the whole thing. Yeah.
That's right.
They constantly say it. It's just like all advice, like, "Oh, Jews, you idiots."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the tone of a lot of that book.
And I love how the Old Testament is summarized in like 3 pages.
Well, but over and over again, like it's summarized in 3 pages about 900 different times.
Yeah.
See, that's why I would warn Thomas off of this, is because it doesn't have stories the way that the Bible does. You know, or the way that the Old Testament does, I should say. I guess the New Testament really doesn't have much in the way of stories after you get past the Gospels. But it really is just a guy who's read the Old Testament but not very carefully rambling. And it tells the same stories over and over again. It tells the same story of Satan refusing to bow to Adam. I think we're on our 15th time on that now.
Yeah, it's more repetitive than the New Testament, which has 4 people telling the exact same story in a row. It's worse than
right.
Now, can you even imagine?
I wouldn't say the exact same story.
No, not exact.
Trying. Yeah, trying and failing.
Could you even imagine being one of the people that their goal is to memorize it? And
The Hafiz.
the Hafiz. Yeah.
Well, you know what, though? That's not as hard as you'd think. Because, I saw a guy who memorized, like, Stephen King's It one time doing a stage show or whatever. Now, that's impressive. But with the Quran, though, it just says the same stuff so often that you're really only memorizing about 90 pages, and then what order of those 90 pages are regurgitated in.
And admit it, if you forget what you're doing, you could just ad-lib some flowery sounding hate speech.
Yeah. What about the Hadith? Are you guys going to touch on the Hadith at all?
Eventually, yeah.
I guess.
Apparently, all the good stuff is in the Hadith. That's
Right.
where you get.
That's the stories,
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I kind of wish we were doing the Hadith instead of the Quran now. So,
You go for Bukhari first. That's supposed to be the best. Or the one that's most of the they say it's the most accurate.
Well, keep up the great work, you guys. It's awesome stuff. And
thank you for spending the time with us.
did you
It's
ever
really
think
awesome.
that you when you started it, did you think that you'd kind of be part of a movement as such, or were you just podcasters and then you found yourself swept up in it?
yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think that you get to a level of success without wanting to or thinking at some point that you're going to achieve that level of success or whatever, dreaming about it on the shitter one day or something like that. So I think at least on some level, yes, but but on the same level that I was sure the band was going to make it when I was 14,
Right.
and the same way that I was sure that this novel I was writing was going to be, sell millions of copies when I was 21. So, yeah, no, I was absolutely certain that we would be as successful as we have been, but I just didn't believe myself.
Right, and you guys are successful. I mean, do you guys have any plans to start lecturing, start touring around and talking in various conferences?
Well, I don't know. I'm not a super educated dude. Heath is a little bit more than myself, so I don't know that I've got much to add from a standpoint of academic lectures, et cetera. But if you want somebody at your conference to tell good poop jokes, I think we're pretty good at that.
Gotta stick with what you're good at.
Yeah, that's
Right.
great. And then, like Dogma Debate goes to various conferences and just hosts a debate. Yeah. So, I mean, that's always a possibility, just podcast at a conference.
Right. We'd have to make sure, check the toilets, make sure you didn't get upper decked.
Right.
Thanks again for joining us. It's the Scathing Atheists and No Illusions and Heathen Right.
Find their Patreon. Find their Patreon. Make sure they can stay
and Eli
full-time.
and Lucinda in absentia.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good
Yep.
deal.
Thanks.
Really
Looking
appreciate
forward
the invite,
to seeing you when you do your tour.
Yeah, we're definitely going
If
to
you
try and
make it to
one of
Milwaukee,
those.
or even if as close
Chicago
as you get to
or
Chicago,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah.
that would be fine.
I'll do it. And then these guys
I'll tell you what, it's really close to the QED dates, but I have my fingers crossed that I'm going to be able to make it out to see the airman price debate.
Well, we'd love to have you guys and work you in somehow. That'd be great. So it's like you guys would have to go from Scotland to Milwaukee. That would be
Take the train.
one weekend Scotland, the next weekend take the train.
Scotland.
Yeah. So
But awesome podcast, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Just love it. Absolutely love it.
Thanks so
a lot,
much.
man.
All right, take it easy, guys. The Mythicist Milwaukee Show is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasek. Associate producer Melanie Lawson. Engineer Jason Lawson. Mythmeister Antonio Blandone. Researcher Kristen Whitaker-Hood. Closing theme written and performed by Shelley Siegel. On behalf of co-host Brian Edward and the entire team, I'm Rob Moore reminding you to keep it safe and keep it secular.